this is Emma, and my new channel name is Simply Learning because I'm going to be creating new how-to videos for kids, especially dealing with education rather than crafting, but it's going to be a basis of a lot of new things, so I hope that you all enjoy. Today my video is going to be about long division, and this is because recently I went to my brother's elementary school and I realized that lots of elementary schoolers don't know long division, and that is very helpful for when they go into middle school and the grades above. So I wanted to teach the kids long division today so that way they could learn and be prepared for when they enter the higher grade levels. Materials for what you'll need today: you will need some lined paper if you're going to follow along. A pencil and an eraser is always nice because people do make mistakes and that's perfectly okay. And then lots of kids like to show their work with colors so that way it helps them distinguish the differences between the steps. So you can grab markers. I recommend a Texas Instrument calculator because it has really helped me in middle school and high school. So it really prepared me and helped me check my answers and learn what I was doing wrong. Follow along and hopefully you learn some new skills today. Alright, so for long division, basically there's 4 steps: divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. And we're going to be working through all of these in a few different equations and problems. And then these are key ideas that you should remember and that will be taught to you during this video. So, remainders is a big one, and then we're going to be learning how you can turn a fraction into a decimal. We're going to be learning about a repeating decimal and a continuous answer. So let's get started. Our first equation is going to be 649 divided by 9. Alright, so basically how we start out to do this is we say, how many times does 9 go into 64? That would be 7 times, because 9 times 7 is 63. So if you don't remember your multiplication table, it's also good to be studying that, or you can use your calculator to try and help you figure it out. But I know my multiplication, so 9 times 7 is 63. So we're going to write that right below here. And you're going to line it up right with the beginning of your problem. Then you're going to subtract those two. Now, what is 64 minus 63? Obviously it's 1 because 4 minus 3 is 1 and 6 minus 6 is 0. You don't have to put the 0 over here, you can just write 1. Now, the cool part about long division is when you have another number over here, you can bring it down. So draw an arrow just to demonstrate and show your work as to what you're doing. And then bring the 9 and place it right here. If you need to watch that again, feel free. Then you have to figure out how many times 9 goes into 19. How many times can you multiply 9 into 19 before it goes over the number 19? So, for this it would be 9 times 2, and 9 times 2 is 18. So, then, once again, you're going to subtract those two. And that leaves you with 1, once again. Now, you've gotten to the end and you see that you have 1 left over. Now, lots of kids in elementary school aren't taught to keep going on. They are taught to write remainder 1. And that is where the key idea, remainders, comes in. They are told to write R1, which means you have 1 left over when you are done with the equation. Today, we're going to be continuing on, and we're going to erase that. So, you're going to add a decimal to the very end of your equation. If you need to lengthen your division bar, feel free. After you add a decimal point, that is just a little dot that goes after the number, you're going to write a 0. This might seem complicated, but it's not. Just like you brought the 9 down before, it's just adding a 0. So now you're going to bring the 0 down. Write an arrow to show your work, and bring the 0 down and place it next to the 1. Now you've got 10. How many times can 9 go into 10? Only once. So, instead of putting 1 directly right here, this decimal point also needs to be put next to this number. So it's a good habit to get into putting both the decimal points there at the same time. Now, how many times does 9 go into 10? 1. So you're going to put it right after the decimal point. And then you're going to subtract 9 from 10. And you are left with 1. And you can tell that there's a little bit of a pattern here on this specific equation because 1 is dropping down every time. Let's see what would happen if we would continue. Since you've already added a decimal point, now all you have to do is add another 0. And once you've added another 0, you can just bring that 0 down just like you did before. Just like that. And the 0 can be placed right there. You're going to realize that you're getting the same number again. 9 goes into 10 once, so you're going to place that right there. And you're going to subtract the 9. But you're left with 1 again. Now, this is where it gets confusing. You can tell that if you keep this equation going, there's going to be so many 1s, you can just place so many 1s out there. It's just going to keep going, right? That is called a repeating decimal. And what that means is that the same number is repeating over and over and over, or the same set of numbers is repeating over and over and over. So what you're going to do is at the very bottom, you can just write down your answer. And you can copy down your answer from above, 72.1. Only add one of the ones that you're using and put a line over it. This lets your teacher know that you found the answer but that it repeats. And then it's always a good idea to highlight your answer or box it in some way so that way your teacher can see what you have. Now, let's say you ended up with an answer, say 69.59. But every time you kept on getting 59. So let's say it goes out like this. Right? That is still a repeating decimal because you're getting the same 2 numbers over and over again. So now your answer would be 69.59, but the line would go over both of them. Just like that. You could also do that if you have 3. However many numbers are repeating, you just put a line over it. It could be 1,000 that are repeating if you went out that far. Hopefully, you don't have to go out that far, but if you did, it could be as many as you needed to be. Then, you could also get, let's say, 65.5, and then there's lots of 3s. You know that the 3s are going to keep repeating, right? Your answer here would be 65.53, and only put a line over the 3. This indicates that the 3 is repeating, but the 5 is not. This is good to remember always. So, in conclusion, that helps you explain repeating decimals and remainders. We covered remainders. For this, instead of putting 72.1 repeating, right, you could have put also 72 remainder 1. But the point of this video is to get rid of the remainder. We want to keep moving on. Now we're going to be working with 7 divided by 5, and this will teach us, 5 divided by 7, and this will teach us 2 things, fractions to decimals and continuous answers. So a fraction to decimal, so basically you know the fraction 5/7, right? Well, the top always goes in the box. So 5 would go in the box and 7 would go on the outside. So if I were to be writing this over again, 5 right here goes in the box, our box being our division, and then the 7 goes over here, right there. So just remember that when you're doing that. That is how you get a fraction to a decimal. Just for practice, let's say we had the fraction 2/3. You could take that and remember the 2 always goes in the box, so you write the 2 and then your division symbol, and then you write the 3 right outside. Alright, So now that we've got that covered, we're going to be working with 5/7, 5 divided by 7. In other words, this on a fraction, the line that separates the numerator from the denominator always means division in anything. Alright, so now we're going to be doing 5 divided by 7. So you can tell that 7 already does not go into 5. It is already over. So this, for right here, you would say, how many times does 7 go into 5? 0 times. It cannot go into 5. So you would just put a 0 right here. And you might be like, well, what does that mean? How do I show my work? Well, you can put a 0 down here as well and subtract that. It might seem silly, but it helps your teacher see your work. So 5 minus 0 is 5. That tells your teacher that you know that 7 cannot go into 5. Now, you're going to extend it, just like you did on this equation over here, where you added a decimal and a few zeros. You can now do that over here. So you're going to add a decimal point on both the top and the bottom of your equation, just like that. And you're going to add a 0. You're going to bring the 0 down right next to the 5. And so this, again, is showing your work that you brought the 0 down. Now you're going to think, how many times does 7 go into 50? Well, if you know your multiplication, you know that 7 times 7 is 49, and that is as many times as it can go in. So you're going to put a 7 right there, and then a 49, and do the subtraction. 50 minus 49 is 1. So you're going to write your 1. Alright, so now you've got 0.7 so far. Why not add another 0? Since you've got a remainder still, add another 0. You can extend your bar and draw the arrow down to here. Now, drop your 0, just like that. Now, how many times does 7 go into 10? It goes in 1 time. So you're going to put that right up there. And then you're going to write your 7 and subtract the 2. If this seems a little confusing, trust me, it gets easier as you keep practicing. You just need to keep practicing. Alright, so now we've got a remainder of 3. Why not keep going? Drop your 0 down. Right there. You're at 30 now. How many times does 7 go into 30? Well, we know that 7 times 3 is 21. That, you can still fit more in there. 7 times 4, that's 28. Let's try that. Put a 4 up here. And you've got 28. Subtract that. And 30 minus 28 is 2. If I'm moving too fast, feel free to rewind or slow down the video. We're going to keep going just for practice. Add another 0 onto the end and drop it down. And there's your 0. Okay, so how many times does 7 go into 20? So we know that 7 times 2 is 14, so let's try that. Now, 20 minus 14, that leaves you a 6. So we've went out far enough now to understand what happens when you keep going, right? So basically, I'm just going to keep continuing on, and you can watch, and we'll see where this goes. Alright, I've kept continuing on, and you can see that they can get very lengthy, but at this point, if you think that there's no particular pattern, it actually is going to end up repeating, but we're going to pretend that there was no pattern here. So your answer, you could write 0.714, and you could copy down that whole row right there. And for your answer, you could just put ... That means it's a continuous answer. You don't know how far out it goes, but you know it goes out a while. So that could be your answer. If you happen to go far out enough, like we did, that you realize that, oh, we're back to 49 again, that this thing actually does repeat, you could say 0 times 714,285 repeats, and you could do a line bar right above there. Most of the time when you write your answer, however, you will not need to go out that far. So say you only go out a few decimal points and then you put a ... after it. Any of these are acceptable answers. Say you're still sticking with remainders, you could theoretically say 0 remainder 7, but that doesn't make much sense because, well, actually you could say 0 remainder 1 because this was your 1 here, but that doesn't make much sense because you already know it's a fraction, you just want to figure out how the fraction works. So, I think we've covered everything. These are the main points that you're working with. You're going to set up your equation by dividing. You're going to multiply by figuring out how many times the number on the outside goes onto the number on the inside. Then you're going to subtract those two numbers from each other and figure out what that number is. And then you're going to bring down the next row. That's the basis of long division. And then you've also learned some key points that are good to remember and that you might see come up when you are dividing with long division. I recommend that you practice this skill multiple times and make sure that you perfect it so that way on a math test, if you need to divide something, you already know how and you don't have to use a calculator. So anyways, I hope you all did enjoy and I hope you learned something about long division. If you feel like you need more review, just start dividing numbers and check your answer with a calculator. I hope that you learned something, and goodbye.